Today we have Angela Frank, who is a growth advisor with over a decade's experience helping health and wellness startups scale profitably. As the founder of the Growth Directive, she has generated more than 50 million in marketing revenue for brands like 23andMe, Lemonade Health, and Aeroflow Healthcare. Angela specializes in building marketing ecosystems that drive sustainable growth, reduce customer acquisition costs, and supercharge ROI. She also has a podcast called The Growth Pod, where she shares actionable tips for entrepreneurs looking to build profitable, purpose-driven brands. Her passion for health and wellness informs her work as she partners with businesses across different areas to unlock their full growth potential. Hello, Angela. How are you today?
Hey, Mark. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. As I was saying just before we hit record, this area of health and being is not something that I've necessarily shied away from, but I think the access of business models, business processes in this space is actually quite unique, and I'm really looking forward to delving into that and speaking to you about that. So thank you for joining me today. All of my guests ask the first question is, what does a business mindset mean to you?
Yeah, I think a business mindset is really a growth mindset and one that comes from a place of curiosity. I think that there's so many moving parts in any business, and there's a lot of successes, but there's also a lot of failures. And so you need to be able to take those failures, learn from them, learn from your successes, and continue to grow over time. And so that's what a business mindset means to me.
Yeah, so growth is massively important. That whole idea, I had a growth specialist on how he helped grow and scale businesses, and he said, if you're not growing your business, you're not looking to expand revenue, profitability, employees growing, then in essence you either are a solopreneur, which is fine. People's life choices are absolutely fine, but it's not necessarily a pure business, as you said. So what, first of all, got you into growth as a topic in business?
Yeah, so it actually started with my very first business. I opened a little e-commerce business when my husband was in the military. We moved like 10 times in 4 years, and so I needed something that would move with us and a way to develop some skills, and in a way that if we were moving so many times, it could move with me. And when I was running my business, the first thing that maybe anybody realizes when they're running a business is the need for marketing, because you have a business, but like, how are you going to tell people about it? How are they going to find you and come purchase from you? And so that's really where I started diving deep into growth strategies and learning how to run and grow a successful business. After he left the military, I got a few corporate jobs working as a marketing director and really working in larger companies and owning their growth department. And growth is a little bit different from marketing in that a lot of it is marketing, but you have some sales functions as well, mainly with like SDRs and working closely with the sales team. And so I really got a great understanding of how all of those moving parts fit together. And the more that I worked in the corporate world, the more that I realized understanding of the overall strategy between marketing and sales and what works for both is really missing in a lot of companies. And that's what inspired me to start my consulting business, so I could help a lot of companies really solve that pain point.
Yeah. And we're going to go deep into the clients that you work with and how you're helping them and your consultancy as well. But before we go into that, I just want to ask a question. Tell me one thing about your upbringing which reflects on who you are today.
Yeah. When I was growing up, we actually were on welfare. My dad had a drug problem, and so my mom was left raising 3 daughters. And before she re-entered the workforce, she was a stay-at-home mom. And so she was only able to get the work that was available to somebody who had taken a long break from the workforce. And so we grew up with doing a lot with very little. She was great at keeping a budget. And so that really taught me that I'll always be all right, no matter what happens. And so that's enabled me to take a lot of risks in my life, where maybe a lot of people see business as this scary thing or like a lot of uncertainty. I was really empowered knowing that no matter what happens, I'll be okay, because she showed me how to do it.
That's incredibly inspiring. And thank you for being so honest about your father and so on. So do you think like this, one of the things that interested me about you said was about budgeting and that whole idea of being able to manage. Sometimes it's like a business, managing your own accounts and managing your own systems. Do you think that has impacted the way that you have focused on business and about growth and ideas like that? Do you think there is a link between that idea of being able to manage someone's budget and also wanting to grow a business?
Yeah, I think that it's really important for anybody to know how your money is being spent, both personally and in your business. And one thing about me is I actually hate being on a budget. And so I always try to make way more money than I would ever spend. And so that's actually set me up pretty well. I hate budgets so much. And one, I can look at the numbers and see where everything's going and have a strategic plan. And I think a lot of people who don't look at that, they can get to a point in their business where they realize that they're spending almost every dollar that they're bringing in. And for me, I want a really profitable business. So again, I don't have to have a budget either in my business or my personal life. And that's really set me up for success.
And obviously you're reinvesting into the business. Do you have, I don't often ask these questions, this type of question, but do you invest like the surplus that you have, are you reinvesting into the stock exchange, real estate or something like that? Or is it all being put into your business?
So I have certain percentages in my business where a percentage of profit will be set aside to invest in some sort of growth activity. And then personally, I take a lot of money out of the business and invest it personally into a retirement account and also into the stock market.
Yeah, sensible. Yeah. Really sensible. And one of the things that I've talked about on the show lots of times is that cash is still king, and you need to have money to either invest in marketing or growth strategies, operations, finance. Like you need surplus time because there will invariably be difficult times, and that sort of buffer zone, that cash flow available is so important. A lot of business owners don't think that. Why do you think that is an idea with that we struggle as entrepreneurs to know that we've got to have that sort of runway to support the bad times as well as the good?
I think it comes from there's so many things that are always going on in business. And so you can come from a mindset where my business is profitable, so therefore I don't have money problems. But like you mentioned, Mark, there's this other piece of the equation, which is your cash flow and understanding when money is coming out of the business versus when money is coming into the business. And especially if you are operating on a consulting model like I am, you might have periods of time where you have a big upfront project payment, but then you're fulfilling that project for a few months. And so you really need to understand how much money can I actually take out of the business to make sure that if I have next month only a couple of leads come in and it takes me time to close it, that I have money to pay all of my expenses during that time. And I think it just really comes from needing to sit down and look at your numbers. And also something that's been really helpful for me is having an accountant that takes care of everything, shows our cash flow analysis, shows how much profit we've made each month. And when you have somebody digging into the numbers like that, presenting it to you as the business owner in a way that's really digestible, it makes your life a lot easier. And that way you're not having to dig through all of your numbers yourself to find all of this I'll find out all of this information. You have somebody presenting it to you, and that's been a huge win for our business.
Yeah, a good bookkeeper, an accountant, like they're so important for business owners, and a lot of people do it themselves, and sometimes might take shortcuts or might not do it as well. So I think a bookkeeper and an accountant is essential to get those numbers right. Moving on. What inspired you to work in the health and well-being industry?
Yeah, it was actually some niche research that I was doing. I love health and wellness personally, but just because you love something doesn't always mean that there's a business opportunity there for you. So I when I started my consulting business, I was already in health and wellness, and I started talking to other founders to see if this was an opportunity for me and something that made sense for the businesses that I'd like to work with. At the same time, I was also doing niche research for financial advisors offering the same type of services. And when you do that and you compare feedback from two groups of people, you're able to see who has the appetite to actually use your services, or if you're a product-based business, your products. And you get a lot of great feedback that way. And by doing that, I knew that the health and wellness niche really needed this strategic piece in their business. Health or financial advisors did as well, but they had some other layers of bureaucracy, which made it really difficult for them to actually use my services. And so that was really affirming to me to know, okay, I have great appetite in that market. My products and services make sense for the market, and it's something I'm passionate about, which is a huge win. And so all of those pieces were really in place for me to continue serving health and wellness businesses.
Is there ever a different appetite from a business owner who's in the health and wellness space versus their appetite for profit? Because, as I say, I've not spoken to a lot of people on my show about this industry, but I would guess some of these people are coming from a very, whether it's a spiritual or an authentic sort of place of focusing on health. Have you ever encountered some businesses that say, what you're recommending is growing too fast, we don't want to be that profitable, we don't want to be in that sort of growth phase? Have you approached that?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of working with so many different types of founders and business owners that I've definitely encountered people who have goals that are less aggressive. And for those people, we make less aggressive marketing strategies. Of course, everyone still wants to grow, but something that's core to my belief is that you can have growth and profitability. They don't need to be mutually exclusive. And when I'm actually having this growth conversation, a lot of startup founders, I'm actually seeing the opposite, where they don't really care about profitability. They just want to grow. And of course, we can create those strategies, but I always challenge those types of founders. Sure, you maybe have funding now, but do you have plans to raise another round? Do you think that acquiring customers profitably might set you up for better success in the future? And I do challenge the growth at any cost mindset a little bit with my strategies. But one of the things that's so fun and exciting is I get to work with people of all different types of growth styles, and I can really make strategies that work for everyone.
Yeah, and I just don't understand why, even in the tech industry, why profitability is seen as a negative versus growth, because a profitable business has a lot more long-standing opportunities than necessarily keep on getting seed funding, different levels of funding. So I find that a little bit intuitive, but I understand with especially tech businesses, they're just looking for market share as quickly as they can rather than profitability. Yeah. Why did you get into the health and being? Like, what is the passion? What's the mission? What's the values that you have that meant that when you found this niche, you thought, I need to work with more companies that in that industry?
Yeah, so one of my core beliefs personally is I believe in the empowerment of every individual. And something that's really core to that is your health and wellness. And I think if you're living a healthy, really just nice life, your body feels great, you have great energy levels, you'll show up as the best version of you in your life, and you're empowered to take more risks, and you just feel better in general. And so those two things together really make me love the health and wellness niche. Health being, of course, like healthcare, telehealth, and wellness being more of that other core piece of the pie. What's your mental health like? What's your spiritual health like? And so the way that these two things play together are really just important to me as an individual. And it's very exciting that I get to help other companies who have very similar core values to myself fulfill their mission as well.
Yeah, amazing. And so, as you said, you worked in marketing roles, in growth roles. What made you decide that you wanted to set up your own consultancy and be the business owner yourself?
I love being my own boss. I love being able to support companies in a way that makes sense for them financially. But the catalyst moment for me was realizing that a lot of senior level marketers don't have an understanding of overall strategy. What they understand is their lane that they've come up or their silo that they've come up through marketing. So if you're an email marketer, you really understand email marketing and email marketing strategy. But what you might lack is how that plays into all of the other marketing channels and all of the other components of a marketing team and a growth strategy. And even a few CMOs that I was working with, I noticed lacked that cohesive understanding. And so for me, it was a great opportunity to work for myself, support the companies that I want to support, and do it in a way that makes sense for them. So something I do is fractional support, meaning if you don't have the means to hire a full-time CMO, then you would bring me on fractionally. You would still get high quality, high caliber strategy, but the way that I'm supporting you makes sense for your business and your growth goals, instead of feeling like you have to bring on this $400,000 a year CMO.
Yeah. And the whole business of fractional CMOs, COOs, CEOs, CFO, it's definitely an area of business that is expanding. In a networking group that I'm with in the US, is a lot of people that are providing those services. It feels people with a lot of experience in their lane are seeing that there's opportunities to be able to do this across a number of companies. So one of the companies you work with is 23andMe. So how, for them, how have you impacted their business as a consultant that you're helping them in marketing?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm doing with 23 is helping with their paid acquisition strategy. And I also work closely with one of their portfolio brands, Lemonade Health, which is a telehealth company. And we're working on a conversion rate optimization project. And I'm currently doing work for them, so I'm under an NDA about the impacts of that work.
Okay.
But we're able to essentially go through landing page by landing page and make sure that things are optimized for conversion. And for the paid acquisition strategy on 23, making sure that all of the creatives dialed in, making sure that user journey really makes sense. And at the end of the day, no matter what business size or type that I'm working with, I'm trying to bring in as many high quality prospects as possible for the lowest cost. And so that's what I'm doing with both of those brands as well.
I see marketing and sales as different lanes, but very much should be supporting each other. You don't have to give an example. You can talk around an example of one of the clients, but I've had stories where this marketing person entered in and the sales team were on one side of the office and the marketing team was on the other side of the office. They never spoke. They just complained about each other, not converting or not bringing enough leads in. From your experience of working with these types of clients, how important is it that the sales and marketing team are aligned and are working together?
It's very important. And I think it's something that doesn't happen enough. Like you mentioned, Mark, a lot of teams operate that way where marketing is their own group and sales are their own group. And it's a lot of back and forth complaining and blaming. And it doesn't need to be that way. When you have a marketing and a sales team that works together, you have open lanes of feedback. Of course, marketing should always know if the leads are low quality and have that feedback as soon as possible. But at the same time, if marketing is providing leads to sales, should be following up with every lead that comes through, not just the ones that look the juiciest to them or the most likely to make a deal. And so that's really where I've found success bringing in somebody in a sales development role who is the middleman between sales and marketing. That person is able to follow up with every lead, make sure they're qualified, send the qualified ones on to the account executives or the account reps, and then they now have the juiciest leads, and marketing gets immediate feedback on anything that's low quality, spam, or just otherwise off target.
I think it's one of those things that are totally, in some businesses, totally underestimated how important it is, that communication. When you're working with clients, you mentioned earlier about the acquisition costs. I'd like to delve into that because it's something that can be relatively straightforward, but how do you, when you're talking to a new client that you're coming in and you feel that their acquisition costs are too high, how do you have that conversation with them, and what sort of thoughts do you bring into that to be able to lower that cost?
So I think that having that conversation with somebody whose acquisition costs I feel are a little too high really comes down to understanding their business model. I've worked with companies where they can pay upwards of $2,500 per lead, and that's profitable for them because their average customer will come in and spend $6,000, $10,000 with them in the first month.
Yeah.
And really understanding those components of the business and how the money works and flows through the organization is key. But then beyond that, there's always opportunities, even if something's profitable or working for you, to do even better than what you're doing. And that's where I come in with my strategies. I really make sure that we're hitting targets, but then we're creating more testing and more aggressive strategy to then surpass those targets. Continue to lower costs as much as is feasible. Continue to find more effective marketing channels that make more sense for the business. I'm never content with, oh, that's working so good, we'll just keep it like that. No, I always want to do something that's better. And the other thing that when you're testing and continuing to try to improve, the other benefit of that is that it sets you up for any changes in the marketplace. So one of my very first brands that I worked with, they were all in on Google ads. They were spending about $60,000 a month. When I dug into the numbers, I realized that their agency was actually ripping them off, and none of their ads had been profitable for a long time, but they had been reporting the numbers in such a way where it looked like things were really working out for the business. And so what we were able to do is diversify the ad strategy to different channels. We were able to reduce the amount that we were spending in ad spend by 10% each month, and we actually made 30% more sales with a diversified ad strategy. So I always try to find those opportunities for the brands I'm working with.
So for that example, if you don't have to tell me the client, but you're diversifying the ad spend. So instead of just purely Google Ads, what else did you look into for the ad spend?
Yeah, so that company had a B2B side. They were a fitness equipment retailer. They had a B2B arm and they had a B2C arm. So they would sell commercial grade fitness equipment to high-end athletes or home users, people who really wanted to spend a lot on their gym equipment. And at the same time, they would target physical therapy offices, smaller sized gyms, boutique studios, and personal trainers. And so we had a unique opportunity where we could diversify into Meta and Instagram, or Meta ads, Instagram and Facebook for that B2C side. And for the B2B side, we moved over to LinkedIn lead generation ads. And those two things combined were what was the winning strategy for that company at the time.
And is a diversified marketing strategy as effective as perhaps an investment fund that has a diversified for your investment fund? Because is there an issue that people can get too reliant on one particular marketing strategy, like Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever it is? Can there be an over-reliance on one marketing channel?
100% there can. And in my example, the ads were not profitable because of the way the agency was managing it. But the opposite could have also been true. They could have been not profitable because they were over-reliant on Google, and now CPMs and costs to advertise on the platform had increased, and that would make it less and less profitable over time. But because you don't have a diversified ad strategy, you feel like you have to continue to pay more and get less for like slimmer and slimmer margins. I see this happen to a lot of brands, and that's a really dangerous place to be in. And so if I am looking at an ad strategy for a company and they are all in on one channel, I highly advise at least testing into a few other channels to identify a secondary opportunity. You could just do, depending on your budget, 5 to 10% of your ad spend into a different channel. In the event that something happens to your main channel, then you've already had testing and learning, and you're primed to now switch that budget over, and your business activities are pretty uninterrupted because you've taken the time, you've set aside a little bit of that budget for testing, and you know what works on a different platform.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And that's coupling the marketing with the growth strategy, which I think really plays into how you're making an impact on these businesses by putting not just, because marketeers can be quite dogmatic about things that work, but actually testing and marketing is so important to be able to test other channels. As you say, if something drops off, becomes more harder to acquire through Google Ads or whichever one it is, having something diversified gives you a backup if the conditions of Google Ads changes.
And if there's one thing that's a constant in marketing, it's that things are always changing and evolving. And so if you're testing into different strategies and you have your messaging and your product really dialed in, you're setting yourself up only for success by making sure that you have these alternative routes to pursue in the event that something changes and impacts the performance of one of your most historically reliable channels.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your view on the difference and how you manage the difference of marketing as an art form and also as a measurable mechanism for business growth?
Yeah. One of the things that I always start with any marketing strategy is the data. I find that a lot of companies have grown really fast or they've built the plane as it's in flight. And so one of the key pieces that's missing with a lot of my clients is a clear data dashboard and really understanding how everybody is interacting with the marketing and how that is actually translating to sales. Once we have that in place, there's a little bit of an art form when you're creating the testing strategy and when you're choosing the channels. And that's something that I'm really lucky where I get to work with a lot of different types of brands within health and wellness. And so I can see a little bit more of a broad view of what's working. And so that's a little bit more of an art form. Okay, you're doing really well with email. You're doing really well with these few ad channels. Why don't we introduce an organic strategy next? And just guiding and trying to find those next opportunities for the brand is where that art form comes in.
And how do you assess, because everyone's element of what success is within marketing and business growth is different. When you're having that first conversation with a client, how do you assess what success means to them and where they should be looking to grow?
I always start with their goals. They have, of course, growth goals for the brand, but they have personal goals. There was a reason why they started the business. They have a reason for wanting to grow the brand. Either they are planning an exit or they are planning a certain type of lifestyle. They're planning to own the business and back away. And so one of our first conversations is always centered around where are you going and why? And that is what I then take and say, okay, so this is our end goal. And here's some things that we're going to do to get going in that direction. And here are some markers that we are successful in that trajectory, that we are on the right path. And so I really work backwards with the end in mind for any strategy. And those individual success markers might look different for every brand, but we start with the unique goal that the founder or the owner has and then work backwards from there.
Yeah, so you're reverse engineering from where they want to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So give me an example of a client so you mentioned about the fitness company, but give me another example of a client where they were struggling with their marketing and you came in and you did your assessment phase and then were able to change their direction of growth and how you were able to do that.
Yeah, so I was working with a B2B brand who had they had seed funding. They were not looking to raise another round, so they were looking to acquire as many customers as possible and do it profitably because that profit would then set them up for future growth. And when I joined, their marketing team was one graphic designer who also ran all of the email. And it was my job to watch the landscape, see who internally we could tap for marketing support, identify hiring needs, and create a growth strategy for the brand. What we were able to do for them in 12 months is a complete website rebuild, redefine the email marketing strategy because the graphic designer was overworked and it really was not, the strategy was not bringing in enough business for them. We created some community marketing efforts. We set up paid ads with about $10,000 a month ad budget. And we went into a organic social media strategy. Those things all brought in 10 figures of pipeline within 12 months. And so my job was to bring people in who could support that from the existing team. We also hired that SDR, I love sales development functions for sales-driven organizations. And we were able to put all of those pieces together within 12 months.
Amazing. What's your own marketing strategy? How do you get clients?
Yeah, LinkedIn and word of mouth has been great for me. One of the things that I'm working on over the next 12 months is really ramping up our client acquisition strategies to continue to be able to serve more brands. And by serving more brands, I just get the ability to see what's working on a broader scale. And the more that I do that, the more effective I am in what I do. And so that's very exciting for me. I'm going to be really diving into our podcast and trying to leverage that more for client acquisition and just that, building that relationship before somebody comes through as a lead. And then as well as some organic social and organic search marketing as well. So LinkedIn has been the huge driver, word of mouth. And
Yep.
then we're looking to expand in the next year.
Yeah, so LinkedIn is a really, even though it's got a billion users now, I've got a friend who's a LinkedIn specialist that helps me out. And it does feel like that it's changing slightly, though. Now it feels, I think a year or two ago, like definitely 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, it was underutilized. It was still organic, was really positive. Do you fear that LinkedIn might be getting to a saturation point as well?
I do fear that, but anytime a social platform is getting saturated, what I've noticed is it's just because everyone's doing the same type of content. And so, usually, if you are able to change the content style, your stuff will perform a lot better. And so, something that I'm going to be testing into is some different types of lead magnets. I do notice that LinkedIn is changing, and personally, it's still working. But again, you never want to rest on your laurels with any marketing
Yeah.
strategy, mine included. And so I'm going to be testing into some things to see, will LinkedIn within the next 2 years continue to be a strong driver for clients for me, or will I need to rely more heavily on some of the other marketing that I'm going to be launching within the next year?
Thanks, Angela. So I'm really fascinated. Your other strategies. It's like speaking to a doctor when you've got an ailment. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm now speaking to a marketer. From what you've shown me today and spoken to me, you are in a very unique. You have a unique selling point that you have that growth strategy that gives you that beyond just a marketing channels. So can you divulge what the next thing is that my listeners should be targeting? Because I'm sure most of them are doing LinkedIn, probably some are doing some paid ads of some description, but where are you looking to grow your marketing channels in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I really love organic, mostly because being a consultant, I have the freedom to bring in a lower number of leads. And since I fulfill all of the contracts myself with the with the help of a small team, I don't need to have hundreds of leads coming in per month to be sustainable. And so for me, I'm going to be expanding into organic search and organic social over the next year, just
So
to,
that's SEO. You're
yep.
going to be SEO for your website, yeah?
Yep, absolutely. Blogging for SEO and also just to create more content in general. I always come from a place of value and trying to provide as much value upfront as I can. And so not only does blogging help with that SEO strategy, but it helps me lead with value and really try to build that relationship on the front end. So, someone who's listening to this, if you are realizing that you need to diversify your strategy, something that I always recommend is looking at your marketing as an ecosystem. It's something that's nebulous, it ebbs and flows over time. And so, you should always be looking for that next best opportunity for your marketing to set yourself up for success should anything change, but also just to make sure that you're taking full advantage of the marketing opportunities that are available to you. And so, something that I always recommend is starting with a scaled back number of marketing channels that you can support. Sometimes that's just one, going all in on one channel. But once you've taken that as far as you can take it, make sure you are then looking to what's next. What are we going to do better on this channel, and which channel are we going to expand into? And over time, you will continue doing that. And as your business grows, you will get more solidified in your stable marketing foundation. Things will feel less shifty, things will feel a lot more reliable. And so, just keeping in mind that things will change, but there are things you can do to set your business up for success, not only now, but in the future as well.
Yeah. And you said about the ecosystem. So you tell me about your book, Your Marketing Ecosystem.
The book just goes through my entire process. If you're hearing something that I'm saying and you don't really understand how that would necessarily implement itself into your business, the book really goes through step by step how I start with the data analysis, how I make sure that everything is connecting with all of your existing marketing channels, how I identify future opportunities for you. And it goes through my entire process. It's meant to be very plug and play for somebody who is just starting out, but it's also a great primer if you are new to this concept of the marketing ecosystem. It helps you understand a little bit more about the way that I work and create growth strategies for brands.
Amazing. And you said a few minutes ago that you have a small team. So what's the makeup of your small team that helps you?
For full-time employees, it's myself and my husband. And then for part-time employees, or contract employees, we have a graphic designer, an email specialist, and we also tap in a video editor and some other specialty graphic designers as needed. We are lucky in that our graphic designer can also support our web development needs through her husband. And so they're a little team that supports us occasionally.
And what does your husband do?
He is our content guru. So he's editing all of the podcast episodes, making sure that everything is being scheduled and sent out on time. And he also plays a role in our content strategy. Since I am always on calls with clients and speaking with people like you, Mark, on podcasts, I really need that support, making sure that our content for my LinkedIn, my Instagram, and some of these other channels that we're going to be expanding into, all those ideas and everything are covered. And so that's everything he does.
What's it like working with your husband?
I love it. We're both very stubborn people, so we've had to navigate that a little bit at the end of the day because I started the business. He gives me 51% of the decisions. So if there's anything that I feel very strongly on, we've learned to just let it lie and we agree to disagree. But I really value his opinions, and he's somebody who is also very strategic, but in a little bit of a different way than I am. And so it's really nice if I'm struggling with something, I can run things by him. And he usually has a great point of view that's way different than how I think about things. So it works out.
Yeah, and you're still running the business, you're still married, so obviously it is working.
Yeah.
All right. How do you think you've evolved as a leader? You were saying about other people within your team, your husband and the other graphic designers, website people. How do you think you've evolved as a leader running your own business?
I have had the privilege of working with many great leaders that I've learned from personally. So that's been something that has really helped me understand different leadership styles and also the way that other people may need different leadership styles. And so something that I try to do is always meet someone where they're at. And of course, at the end of the day, I'm not going to bend over backwards to deliver management to somebody on a silver platter, but just understanding that different people need different things. For example, my husband is somebody who's very visual, and so I usually, if it's something that I understand how to do that he doesn't, I just need to sit down and go through it with him. Whereas our email strategist, she's very written word driven,
Mm,
and so I'm able to
yeah.
just draft up an SOP and send that to her. And just understanding what's the best working style for everyone and remaining flexible myself, making sure that, of course, that I'm not spending too much time bending over backwards to manage anyone, but just I think really honoring how people like to be managed has been really great for me as a leader, and it makes those work relationships a lot more seamless.
What's your preferred working style? Written, visual, sound?
I'm pretty good in any way, which is probably why I'm like pretty ambidextrous when I'm leading other
Yeah.
people. If somebody has a well drafted SOP, I'm able to follow that. For clients, I like to have a conversation, and I usually have them fill out a written form to make sure that what they're saying in their written form and what they're telling me personally are matching up. I'm usually able to identify any blind spots in strategy and address them from the start that way. And that's been really helpful personally when I'm working with my clients.
Mm. Um, you mentioned earlier about risk and that you are willing to take risks. And one of the questions that I like to ask my guests is, what is your risk appetite and has it changed over the years?
It's definitely changed over the years as my goals have changed. But I think that anybody who's in business has an appetite for risk because it's not something that's, guaranteed that you'll be successful. And so, in that way, I would say that I'm not risk averse, but I'm also not somebody who will bet the farm on any decision. Something that's been helpful for me is we actually had Steve Anderson, the author of the Bezos Letters, on the Growth Pod. And he says that Jeff Bezos looks at decisions as a one-way door or a two-way door. Two-way door decisions are something that you can easily walk back through the door. And so those decisions, even though they might seem a little bit riskier for you, if you can essentially easily reverse that decision, there's no risk in making that decision. And so those things can be decided upon pretty quickly. Whereas if it's a one-way door, it's something where you're betting the farm. It's something where you cannot turn around and go back. Those require a lot more decisions. And it's been a really nice way for me to frame up how I think about risk and decisions, because I think a lot of business owners maybe think similarly to that. But having that analogy makes it a lot more understandable. You're not this super risky person. You're not out here gambling your livelihood. You're taking these calculated risks. And of course,
Yeah.
not all of them are going to pay off. But if you're thinking about things strategically, more of your decisions will pay off than the ones that don't. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you'll end out ahead.
I love that calculated risks. That's how I envisage running my businesses. Is yes, risk is necessary. Being a business owner, there is an element of having to take a risk, but equally trying to mitigate those risks and make them calculated risks and hedging your bets on things that work, I think is super important. What's been your biggest challenge, either professionally or personally?
Personally, it was moving so many times. We lived in, I think, 4 different states in 4 years, and we lived in 10 different cities. And that period of my life was very turbulent, and I always felt like nothing was certain, because at any point in time, we could be told that we were moving, and that was quite traumatic. But
Yeah.
professionally, it's been getting just like us more comfortable with ambiguity. For consulting, there's certain times where people are reaching out to you, like Q4 is my busiest time of year. I have people who are not only trying to hit their end of year growth goals, probably a little too late in Q4,
Yeah.
but they're also setting themselves up for growth in the next year. And so this is always my busiest time of the year. And then come July and August, people are out enjoying their summer, they're on vacation. And so just understanding the ebbs and flows of my business personally and getting comfortable with that, I think has been a challenge, but one that I'm finally feeling now that we're in this second year, coming up on the third year of being in business. It's something that I've become a lot more comfortable with.
Yeah, amazing. Look, thank you very much for sharing that. Look, I'm coming to the end of the interview. I ask the same 6 questions to all my guests. So quickfire questions. They don't need a quickfire answer. The first question is, what's the best decision that you've made?
The best decision that I've made has been, this is so good, probably to get back into business. I thought I was burned out from my first one. It was an e-commerce business. It was something I really just didn't enjoy. And that's why I got back into corporate to begin with. And I thought that being in business maybe wasn't for me, but really it was just the type of business that I was operating in wasn't fulfilling for me personally. And so the best decision that I've made was to leave corporate and start this consulting business.
So you mentioned about burnout. It's something that is a serious matter. I think mental health is something that is sometimes it's risen in profile, but it's still sometimes dismissed. Tell me a little bit, like, just what were the signs for you that you were burnt out on the business and you needed to either take a break or do something different?
One of the things for me is feeling like I can't take a break or turn off. That's usually the first indicator that I'm getting burned out, because I get into this frantic state where I need to be doing more, I need to be doing more, I can't take a break. As a byproduct of that, I feel very tired, irritable, like my adrenaline is constantly up. And so those things are usually an indicator that I've been burning the candle at both ends. Of course, with that first business, it was just something that was not fulfilling. So there was that element. But even running this business, there's periods of times like if I know I'm going to be going on vacation, I fill up my plate a little too full and I'm working too long of hours. And so I'm trying now to be more cognizant of when I'm feeling like I don't have the ability to just sit quietly for a moment. One of
Mm.
the things that I've implemented is no social after 7 p.m., no social media after 7 p.m. on the weeknights, and all day Saturday, I'm off social media. I also try to be off social media all day Sunday, but once in a while, I'll do like an afternoon social planning just to set myself up for the
Right.
week. And so for that, I might be on social media on the weekend, but I do nothing day on Saturday where I don't work, I don't run any errands. I just try to force myself to be still. And I can't read any business books, I can't study business. It's just a day of quiet. And it's something that if I've had a busy week, I would just want to keep working through, but I know that I've set that time aside. And in the evenings after 7 as well, those two things have been really important for me, not only for being able to recognize when I'm feeling burnt out, but to have the tools to mitigate any of that feeling and making sure that I'm taking the time to rest.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice was actually a book that I read called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And it really helped me reframe my thinking. I read this in probably like 2016, 2017. And it's something that I come back to many times to just refresh. And in the Success Principles, he talks about taking radical responsibility for what you're doing, making sure that if something doesn't pan out, you made the decision. And so there's things that
Mm.
you can learn and just understand that you can be better next time. And that's been really important for me in my growth and just creating a growth mindset, making sure that I'm framing all of my thoughts positively and that woo stuff, just making sure that you're setting up your mental health to support your success as well.
Yeah, amazing. Who's the person that's helped you most in your career?
My husband, he's always been there for me to complain to if I'm having a bad day, to strategize with if I need help with that. And also, we have the same goals. So he's always been just a great support system for me to continue doing what we're doing and create a life that's in alignment with the vision that we have for our life and goals and everything that we'd like to
Oh, so you
accomplish.
talked about your vision. What's your vision then? What's the mission and the vision for you?
Yeah, the mission and the vision, one is to create a profitable business that supports our lifestyle, but in the long run, we're both huge advocates for health and wellness, and so we're working on the concept of a nonprofit organization who would maybe provide health and wellness services to people in the community who would need it. I know you mentioned you're in the UK and you might be familiar how the health insurance and everything is here in the
Yeah.
United States and how that a tricky system to navigate if you don't have the
Mm.
means to. So it's very early on, but we'd like to take the freedom and some of the money that we've been able to create through the business and now pivot that into something that's impacting more than just me and my husband. It has a broader impact in our community.
That's amazing. That's brilliant. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Tell me about a regret that you have.
I'll always say my biggest regret was a race that I ran in first grade. I wore zip up shoes instead of tie shoes, and I lost the race when I would have won. But more seriously, I think regrets for me come down to not telling. I'm not like a words of affirmations type person. And I think a lot of my regrets come from not being able to speak as much praise to people as I would maybe want to. And that's something that I'm actively working on. I think it's a huge character flaw that I have because I'll often be like thinking it in my head, but something blocks it from coming out of my mouth and saying it to people. So that I think is something that has always been a huge regret of mine and something that I'm continuing to work on.
Mm. Good luck with that. What are you most proud of?
Building a business that supports my husband and I and also is able to have an impact in our contractors' lives. Ideally, we'd love to bring on more full-time employees and be able to provide them amazing benefits, but just being able to support us has been great. But then also the impact I'm able to make in the businesses that I work with. A lot of the people who are maybe struggling to make marketing work as well as they want now have growth plans that are working for them. They're bringing in customers profitably, and they're able to go and have the impact in their life and their community that they want. I was just talking to a prospect yesterday, and her growth goals are to, one, be able to pay her director that is so critical to her business a salary that's more than double of what she's being paid now, but also to cut a huge check to a charity that she'd love to support. And so these are the things that I'm just so grateful, not only that I'm able to impact my life, my team's life, but also the life of the clients that I work with and their teams and their communities as well.
Amazing. Tell me something that most people don't know about you.
One of the things that I love to share is that I've been cageless shark diving in Hawaii, and I think people are like, that's so kooky and crazy. And I think that kind of goes against that one-way door thought that I shared earlier. It's one of my favorite memories from when we lived in Hawaii.
Amazing. What does legacy mean to you?
I don't really care much about legacy because I think that if you're too focused on what happens after you pass away, you're not really living for yourself now. And so something that is so important to me is making sure that I'm setting up a life that I enjoy living and I'm able to have positive impact in the people that I interact with while I'm doing that. And so I think legacy for me, I'm focused more on my day to day, my regular interactions with people, and making sure that I'm just making everything positive for people that I'm around.
Yeah, you're still quite young though. Like you don't have, I don't know, but you don't have kids. You're not at the stage of your life when you're looking to either sell the business or change your lifestyle to take a step out of your business. It's an interesting question because a lot of most people that I talk to, it's often kids are their legacy, and it's not necessarily their business, but just to set them up for the next stage, or people who are older are saying, when I eventually do die or retire, then it's what's the next stage for my business. So I think at your stage, living life and making those decisions to make your life enjoyable and profitable and get more experiences, I think is a totally valid way of approaching it. So thank you for sharing that. And lastly, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you or what you do?
You can find me at growthpod.fm. That is the website for my podcast where I have talks with experts about growing their business, but I also have solo episodes just walking you through here's a growth topic and here's how you can implement it in your business today. So if you are looking for more growth strategies and things like that, growthpod.fm is the best place to find me.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you so much for your time. Have a lovely day. Cheers.
Mark, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Pleasure. I really hope you've enjoyed that content. It's a really fascinating interview that I've done there. So please do, if you are enjoying this content, please do give it a like. Please do give a subscribe. It'd be really good to boost the subscriptions. It really makes a difference to the algorithm in YouTube. So thank you for that. If you do hit subscribe, hit the bell icon and you'll get all of the content. You'll get notified when all the content is available. Thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated. Thanks a lot.